play as Leon in Fire Emblem 8? Yes, you heard me correctly. In Fire Emblem The Sacred Stones, thanks to its, at the time, unique overworld map, there were challenges that you could do after you defeat the Demon King himself in the Tower of Volani and the Logdo Ruins. In these areas, you would square off against powerful monsters, where upon completion you would be rewarded with the bosses that you faced throughout the game, and even ones that you never really got to see throughout the main campaign. For instance, you can unlock Glen the Sunstone after beating the 5th map in the ruins. How neat is that? But for some of the more popular characters like Selena and Leon are a bit more tedious, where Selena is unlockable after you beat the tower 3 times, no big deal, the tower is pretty easy, but for Leon, you have to beat the ruins 3 times, which is honestly a worthy prize for what I personally would consider the hardest level of content that Sacred Stones has to offer. There is a Fire Emblem character that made their debut in Mario Kart. Well, sort of. It wasn't the actual Mario Kart game, it was actually in the Mario Kart Double Dash bonus disc. This bonus disc featured an array of different trailers and demos for a lot of games, but for fans of Fire Emblem, the most important thing about this was the fact that you could connect your copy of Fire Emblem Blazing Blade for rewards. But who's this lady giving you these rewards? Saint Elimine herself, making her one of the 5 heroes alongside Athos, Roland, Brahmimund, and Durbin to have a recognizable face. Some of the rewards that she would give you include a bunch of different stat upgrade items, the emblem items like the emblem axe, and most importantly the emblem seal, a completely unique item which allowed the holder to have better hit rate. And it wouldn't be until January of 2022 where she makes an official appearance in the Fire Emblem Gacha game as a mythic hero, meaning it took her a whole 19 years for her to escape the Mario Kart Double Dash disc. Fire Emblem made an appearance in what? Ever since the huge spike in popularity thanks to Fire Emblem Awakening selling so well, Fire Emblem has gotten its flowers in other medias. Now before the Awakening era, sure, Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door is allowed to make these references because Intelligent System made both of these games. Or in Kirby Superstar, where there are a ton of different items from other Nintendo IPs, but most notably the Falchion for Fire Emblem fans. But outside of their own company and the Nintendo family, we got My Little Pony making a reference to Fire Emblem with a pony dressed like Lucina. And Amphibia makes a homage to Fire Emblem Three Houses by having one of their characters, Sasha, dress up like Edelgard. And speaking of Three Houses, Bluey makes a few references, most notably the blocks that say Dimitri, Edelgard, and Claude upside down referencing the meme, and a board of characters that strangely look a lot like the characters from Three Houses as well. Fire Emblem references sure go wild. These Skullgirl characters reference Fire Emblem characters. If there's one thing that you should know from my channel by now, it's the fact that I absolutely adore Fire Emblem, and I'm also a big fan of fighting games, even if I'm no good at them. Skullgirls is one of those games that I've played, figured out I'm no good at, and silently cheer on from the sides. But one of the many things that I've come to appreciate about Skullgirls is their many references to other medias, Fire Emblem being no exception. There are 2 characters, the first being Eliza having a color palette that references Tharja, a dark mage from Fire Emblem Awakening, and Annie, who references Byleth, the main character from Fire Emblem Three Houses. And honestly, that's not really surprising. Skullgirls has a plethora of different references, with Annie herself being a huge love letter to the Guilty Gear franchise, Soul Bad Guy specifically. So it's no shock that a game that has Robo Fortune referencing Samus Aran also references another beloved Nintendo franchise. Lucina's Falchion is weaker, and this is done on purpose. In Fire Emblem Awakening, the story can get a tad bit confusing, but the general gist of it is that there are multiple timelines, with the main story focusing on fixing that failed future. Because of this, kids from your future come and travel to the past in hopes to rewrite history. And since the Exalt's blood flows through Lucina's body, she can wield the Falchion in battle, though hers is named the Parallel Falchion with slightly less might than her father's at full potential. This is because in her timeline she was only ever able to collect 4 jewels out of the 5. Using the 4 jewels, she travels to the past, but at the cost of only being a 4th as strong as the full-powered Exalted Falchion, despite having the same effects. So while they never explicitly say it in the game, I love that the developers over at Intelligent Systems really thought things through with this to tell a story just through the weapon itself. Insys has chosen their legendary inheritors. Legendary weapons are a big part of Fire Emblem 6's storyline, with you having to retrieve them all over a leap to stop the dragons once again and stop history from repeating itself. And besides a few characters that have portraits themselves, this is the iconic image that I think most fans know. In Fire Emblem Cypher though, they reused this image but with characters from the Binding Blade +1, since Heartmut had 2 weapons in both X-Ax and the Binding Blade, represented in both Zephyl taking the top middle and Roy taking the exact center. To the left of Zephyl is Sophia wielding Apocalypse, Brahmiman's weapon, and to the right of Zephyl is Deke wielding Armad's, Durban's weapon. To the left of Roy is Rucker and Durandal, Roland's weapon, and to the right of Roy is Sue wielding Muligir, Hanon's weapon. And to the bottom left of Roy is Lucina wielding Forblaze, Athos' weapon, then Guinevere, our only light sage, wielding Areola, Saint Elimine's weapon, and Melody wielding Maltet, Barrigan's weapon. Because of this layout, the mural also fits nicely in a 3x3 card binder, so collecting these cards were a lot of fun, seeing everything come together. The animals of Fire Emblem can get pretty wild. We know animals exist in the world of Fire Emblem, and none is more evident than our dog farm in Fire Emblem Engage, but we're talking wacky animals in this one. Fire Emblem, of course, being a medieval fantasy game, means that of course there are characters riding Pegasus and Wyverns, but then in the 3DS era of games, they made sure to include some of the more interesting types of flying units, like Griffin Knights in the 3DS era of games, only for them to come back in Fire Emblem Engage almost a decade later. And then in Fates, there was the Kinshi Knight, a personal favorite class of mine thanks to their high move and access to fun weapon types in both the bow and spear. Do we count the shapeshifters? It feels a little bit Shinon, but we'll do it anyways. We got the Togwell, rabbit shapeshifters, the dragon shapeshifters, the many forms of the Lugus, including ravens, herons, hawks, cats, tigers, lions, wolves, and there are many dragon forms that come in the color of their scales. But perhaps the weirdest comes in Yamada Kotaro's adaptation in the Fire Emblem 6 manga to include what is possibly the weirdest animal of them all: red pandas being native to Lycia. Which of course isn't canon, but I like to believe it is. These Cypher depictions aren't canon, but they're still super cool. Oftentimes, Cypher might not be canon to the actual story of Fire Emblem, but there is enough believability in the story of the art that makes you still question, okay, what if, with the general answer being, okay, that's pretty cool. Like this Lilina, who's shown wielding both the legendary weapon Forblaze and the legendary weapon Armads. Lilina cannot use Armads in-game, but because she is Hector's daughter, you're like, okay, that's pretty cool. In fact, so cool, she got 2 different artworks for the same card. Or, yeah, sure, when Corrin joined Hoshido and brought down Nora, we see King Leo wielding both Brynhild and Xander's weapon, Siegfried. Can he use Siegfried in-game? No, but as king? Yeah, sure, maybe, but it's still really cool. And of course, the Thracia siblings with Altina holding both the Gay Bolg and Gungnir, the twin lenses of Thracia representing both her father and adopted father, despite Gungnir never being obtainable, and the greatest Cypher art of all time, with Leaf holding both the Light Brand for his mother and the Gay Bolg for his father, despite Leaf never being able to use the Gay Bolg.